Today's episode is one that I just think so many women, especially professional moms, will deeply relate to, even if they've never said these things out loud. My guest today is Lindsay Aggarwal, a law firm partner, a 40 under 40 honoree, a very proud mother of two, and the creator of a parental leave coaching program that supports attorneys through one of the most vulnerable transitions of their lives. Lindsay's program was born after lived experience, after facing severe postpartum depression while trying to appear successful on the outside. She turned her pain into purpose, and with the support of her firm, she built a program designed to change the story for parents coming behind her. In this conversation, we talk about perfectionism, people-pleasing, identity, guilt, mental health in the legal profession, and really what recovery actually looks like. We also discuss how law firms and workplaces can better support parents before, during, and after leave. This episode is for anyone who's ever felt pressure to hold it all together while silently struggling underneath. If you've ever thought, like I have many days, I'm a bad mom, a bad wife, a bad lawyer all at once, Lindsay's story offers hope and a very powerful example of turning personal suffering into lasting organizational change. It is with so much gratitude and appreciation that we welcome Lindsay to the show today.
Welcome to The Mothers-in-Law, a podcast exploring the demanding world of being a mother and a lawyer. Join my mom, Carrie Fogliani, as she shares real-life stories and practical tips to help you find joy and balance in your life. Let's embark on this journey of community and support together. This show is sponsored by General Counsel West, a law firm that supports companies transforming healthcare comprised of mothers and fathers practicing law.
Thank you, Lindsay, for joining the Mothers-in-Law podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Carrie, for having me.
Of course. I really appreciate your willingness to share with us today, especially a topic that you only know about if you've either walked through it or seen someone that you care deeply about walk through it. So I wanted to sort of start so that we could all learn a little bit more about your path to becoming a lawyer and what that was like for you. And then we'll maybe pause right before we get to the good part of your motherhood journal,
Of course.
Motherhood journey.
Sure. So I think part of me kind of always knew I wanted to be a lawyer or was maybe drawn to it. So my dad's an attorney. I grew up, kind of seeing what he did, thinking it was really cool. I love to read and write, as, I think so many of us do. And so that was kind of always the path that I saw myself on. I wavered a little bit during college and explored, some marketing or public relations internships or things like that. But I would say, something just kind of always kept pulling me back to the law. So I went straight through to law school after college and then started as a summer associate at the firm that I'm still with, what was then Bryan Cave and is now BCLP, back in 2012, I guess.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And when was that moment when you decided this is a great time to sort of bring kids into the mix and to become a mom?
Yeah, I feel like that describes it a little more eloquently than I probably thought about it at the time, right? But probably, let's see. So maybe 5 years into my law firm career, I met my husband, and we were both, I guess, a little older, not that much, but we were around 30 when we met. So a couple of years passed, until we got married, and I think then we both wanted kids, and we were sort of thinking, this is the right time. I guess as we're sort of talking about this, I'm not really sure that I did put that much thought into it, right? Which I think will kind of become a theme probably of our conversation. But I just assumed that it would be easy, right? Like it just seemed to me like this was like the next step on my path, wanted to have kids. Let's go ahead and have kids. And that's going to sort of like neatly fit into our lives. Which was not the case, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a question like that for so many of us, like, what could be so hard about this, right? Like, why don't, this is the next best thing.
Yeah.
And kind of, how did you picture motherhood fitting into your life and career? Were you just, this is going to be just one more thing that I do? Or like, what was your vision when you decided this is the time to have a child?
Yeah, I would say this is going to be one more thing that I will do. And I would maybe even add on to that, like, this is going to be one more thing that I'll do that I'll just do like easily and exceptionally well, right? So my mom was like a stay-at-home mom. She was a great mom. And then, like I said, my dad was a lawyer. And so I don't even think that I like stopped to think, oh, this is going to be difficult or challenging, or I need to think through this. I mean, people now ask me, when's the best time in your career to have kids or things like that. And I just think none of that sort of really actually entered into my consciousness. I think I was just thinking like, yeah, this is what's next.
Do it.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, and I think the other part is, we always have these assumptions that, I mean, you've been so successful before in your life, like everything else that you've done sort of that point, of course, not without like working hard and good ethics, but like,
Sure.
Hard work pays off. And so how is motherhood going to be different? Do you think there was any of that perfectionism that kind of played a role in how you were setting yourself up on your motherhood journey?
Definitely. I mean, I said, I'm going to do this exceptionally well. But I think by that, I meant, also like a pressure, right? Like, I'm going to be great at this, right? And, it needs to look perfect from the outside, kind of the same way I think I approached my career.
Yeah, no, it's like one more thing, I guess, on some level. And did you feel pressure at the outset? And we can talk through like, where you were in your career when you had your son, but like to make it look easy, was that part of, your experience when it was getting hard?
I'm thinking about that. Yes, I would say that certainly became more of my mindset with my daughter, which is when I experienced postpartum depression. I'm almost wondering if I didn't initially think that because I had my son a month into the pandemic. And so when I came back to work, it was, working from home. And it was such a weird time, I think, in the world that I'm not even sure I probably gave much thought to like, I'm going to make this look easy, because I think everyone was having a really hard time.
That's a great point. I think when you start the journey off like that, where you didn't also have to kind of not cleanse yourself of your mom role when you're going into the office, that's a whole nother effort, I feel like, and is showing up, when you were going back to work, when you were really physically going back to work. It's a different experience. Well, I want to just kind of shift, to that journey, because one of the hardest things with women that I've spoken with about, especially lawyers, about postpartum mental health challenges is from the outside, we often look like we're still managing it all, that we're still very high functioning, we have it together. At what point did you realize like this was no longer just like exhaustion or stress? And I mean, we can talk through, maybe share a little background about your first and second and when sort of the signs came in. To answer that question might be a helpful time to do that.
Sure. So let's see. So my first was born in April 2020, like I said. Looking back, I mean, I probably had some level of, some sort of perinatal mood disorder going on. It certainly was not the experience I had with my second, but I think a lot of that, again, I kind of brushed aside as, the world is in crisis right now. Like no one's doing well, right? So it's not that unusual that I'm struggling a little more than I otherwise would have thought.
Yeah.
With my second, it's interesting because I think I had this vision in my mind of postpartum depression being very close in time to like when the baby is born, and sort of stereotypically like, not trusting yourself at that point to be around the baby, or not having the feelings you thought you would have about your baby, or things like that. And obviously, that's a very real experience for a lot of women, but that was not my experience. When I was on my parental leave, I actually felt like I was doing great. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being with my daughter. And it was really, I think, at the time that I came back to work and like those two worlds started to converge, that my mental health really started to deteriorate. And the best way I can describe it is sort of like, when I was on leave, I could focus on that and I felt like that was going great. And then all of a sudden, like everything that was on my plate basically doubled, right? And I didn't have, I guess, maybe the mental capacity or bandwidth to do both, at least at the level that I felt like I needed to, or that I demanded of myself. And so there was just a lot of little things over the course of a few months that just, I guess, was like kept stacking up, right? And making it harder and harder. And I remember just thinking like, well, this will get better after, my daughter's name is Mia, after Mia has a steady place in daycare, right? Or this will get better after, we get through this round of expert depositions, or, I just kind of like need to push through this. This will get better. That point never actually happened. But so I think your original question was like, how did I know maybe?
That shift. I mean, I think you describe, that those are sometimes people would like minimize some of those feelings, and like what they've another podcast guest referred to it as like death by a thousand cuts, like the little tiny things coming through that build up. And at one point, but you had to like have an awareness that this wasn't just being tired, being put in a very intense, I think you are a litigator. There's quite honestly no more intense professional environment, I think, to walk back into, unless maybe you have a different opinion on that. But I feel like that's probably one of the more intense things to try to do as a mom, a working mom. So like, how did you know, like, oh my gosh, like this is not just being tired. This is not,
I really think it sort of just had to basically like flatten me, unfortunately. But I remember, I took the, I think it's called the Edinburgh scale or the postnatal, something like that. It's that test that they give you after, maybe 6 weeks out after you have a baby, that's supposed to screen for, postpartum depression. And I kind of found that online. I took it, and this was probably 3 months still before I recognized that I had postpartum depression, but my score on that indicated like high probability of major depression. And I remember I told my husband like, well, that's not right. Because I must have like scored some things too high. Like this, yes, I'm having a hard time, but it's definitely not that. Like, that's not right. So I think I hid it for a long time from, like the people in my life as well as myself. And I think partly it's because I was worried I was weak, and like, I couldn't overcome this and what was wrong with me and things like that. So the point when I finally eventually sort of had to accept it, really, for lack of a better word, was basically my husband and my mom really, really pushed me to go to my doctor. And then, I credit my doctor quite a lot with just being like, you need to like take a step back and take care of yourself. You cannot, like power through this anymore. You need to basically heal yourself. And I think that was, the wake up call, frankly, that I really needed and was just avoiding.
I think it's two things that you've shared in there are so important for everyone to understand, because I was honestly ignorant to the fact that it doesn't always happen right when you have the baby. And being mindful of your mental wellness for, I think you said it's even a year. I'm trying to get how much to give people that grace of knowing, and also the availability of some way to measure that, and I love that even maybe you didn't react immediately like, oh my gosh, the score says this, I should right now get help, that it still took a while for you to, get encouraged by your people that were caring for you, really, to get help. Like what in between that period of time, what was work like? What was it like during the day for you? Just so people understand.
It was terrible, to be honest. And it was, I guess actually the best way, that's sort of like giving too much feeling to it, if that makes sense. It was more like a numbness. I basically felt like I was in a cloud, going through the motions and having really like no attachment to anything. And it is really sad looking back, because I can very deliberately see that like all of the mental energy I had left went so far into like appearing okay on the outside. And basically primarily at work, but still with probably friends and in social situations, but making it still appear like I was okay and I was keeping everything afloat and things like that. And I would just come home at the end of the day and basically just collapse and check out and not have, truthfully, like any interest in my family. And, things that I would normally really look forward to, birthdays, holidays, things like that, I just had no emotion about. Yeah.
So when you see that in yourself looking back, I think that's such a important thing for all of us, as because we don't know what to look for, but I think we've all felt what you just described,
Mm-hmm.
in different spaces, and having it continue for over a period of time. And I do want to credit you said your husband and your mom
Mm-hmm.
in their caretaking of you, because I know we're stubborn, right?
Yeah.
We're not like you have test results saying that you probably have a diagnosis to check, and you're still muscling through, and they're sitting there quietly, as quiet as it can be, saying,
Yeah.
okay, she's going to do it her way, because that's what we do. We do it our way.
Yes.
What, I mean, for other people that are trying to take care of women like us, do you have any guidance or recommendations for them, so that the people that they're caring for, maybe the course of it would be a little shorter or different? Because I feel like that maybe that would have helped you more sooner. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is maybe just checking on people more often even than you think you need to. And I don't think it needs to be like an elaborate, grand reach out, but maybe just even, hey, was thinking of you. Are you doing okay? And I've tried to be really much more intentional about that with my friends who are postpartum, just sort of like continually, just dropping in and saying, how are things going and things like that. And, I hope, again, I hope maybe I wouldn't have pretended that much. And I don't mean to say that people weren't checking in on me. I don't mean that. But it's just so hard to open up to other people about, feeling like you're struggling or doing something wrong. And so sometimes I think it's just, making clear that there's like a safe space and you care to make sure that they're doing okay.
And I think especially, like, you're such a trusted human, given, I mean, we'll get to the work that you've done, which is totally amazing. But even in the moment, like, some of us are still hiding behind our mental state, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we're still fine. And I think it's very interesting that you were able to break down at home, right? You were able to not be forced into being someone that you weren't in the moment. And that's also exhausting, right? That transition at home. And so, because you can't do both, like, even in my own experience, you're either going to be able to pull it off at work
Mm-hmm.
or able to pull it off at home, but it's really hard to do both. And so from your family perspective, I mean, when you went to your doctor and she's trying to help you navigate something that obviously, like, has a lot of stigma, even at the time, a lot of feeling of, I mean, I feel like, was there grief involved in that at that moment of, like, I can't do this, I can't do both? Like, how did she help you to take the next very brave and courageous steps, quite honestly?
Yeah, there was a lot of grief involved because I had not identified, I think, with having like a mental health disorder before this, right? So I think that's also partly why when I, took that survey and that's what it said, why I pushed that away, because I did not want that label. Like, that did not match who I thought I was, and like what I thought a version of perfect was. And so there was a lot of that. I think initially when I talked to her, even there was sort of a lot of like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but like, that's not me and I can't do that. And I just think really over the next few days, just sitting with it, and again, just probably like deteriorating further and further, basically just kind of like forced me into that point. So when I went on leave from my firm, it was not like planned. It was not gracious. It was basically, I was here one day, not here the next. And that was very difficult for me, but it also, I mean, I think it showed like how far I had let it go.
Right. And what was that, from the firm perspective? Because, to be honest, a lot of times on these conversations that I've been having, I don't always get to celebrate how a firm handles or supports. And it sounds like you had a pretty decent experience when you needed to step away. And can you share a little bit of what that looked like?
Yes. It's I would say it's only kind of like with the benefit of hindsight also that I'm kind of able to view it that way. Again, because I think I was so probably numb at the time, so far from like who I felt like I was. But I would say everyone gave me a lot of grace and space to really heal. And I remember one conversation in particular that one of my practice group leaders talked to me about and just said, like, this is a really long career, or it can be a really long career, right? And you need to focus on yourself, your health, and this will be here if and when you are ready. But like right now, you need to prioritize yourself. And I mean, it is not lost on me how incredibly lucky I was to have that, right? And to have an environment where I was able to take a step back and know that there was a job there for me, if and when I was ready to. I mean, I know, again, just I know how privileged I am sort of all throughout this, right? To have had access to, mental health services and things like that. So I think that's very important, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did that translate? Because I think, and I do have, family experience with this, when someone does take a leave, and especially when you have young children at home, it is almost impossible to recover because you're home, you're still mom, you're still in demand of attention, of children that need your support. And I think, you said it really beautifully in another discussion that you have about kids cannot be well unless their parents are well.
Yeah.
And giving you the time to get well for them, even in line with what the managing partner said, quite honestly, this season as a mom, it's very long.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, when you were home, not feeling great, how you managed that season, knowing that there's, I'm sure, a lot of mixed emotions with healing while still being mom.
Yeah. So one thing that I did that at the time felt incredibly selfish, and again, probably like I was failing, is my kids still went to daycare every single day that I was on leave. And I thought about not doing that. And I'm pretty sure my husband really, really pushed me to send them. But I think from the beginning, I thought, well, I'm not going to be at work. So like, why wouldn't they be here? I should be the one taking care of them. And had I done that, I would not have at all, I think, given myself the space to heal. So really during that first month, I would say most days I just like walked outside, maybe read a book, slept a lot, and just like did the bare minimum, because that was pretty much all I could do to get through some of the days. And I think it took me a long time probably to not feel guilty about the fact that, I continued using childcare while I was not working. But that is really like taking that time for myself, I think is probably like one of the best gifts I will probably ever get. The fact that
it's such an act. Yeah. And I think it is such an act of incredible courage, quite honestly, when you describe that. And I'm sure it was hard at the time.
Yeah.
But there's no way to recover without giving yourself that space. And it must have been it's probably one of the hard, when you share that, I'm guessing that had to be probably one of the hardest components of forcing yourself into a healthy recovery for them.
Yes.
For them to give them their mom back, quite honestly, because that is not an easy thing to sacrifice, especially knowing that we are all built worrying about what everyone else might think about it without knowing the feelings of what you were going through. So I just want to publicly tell you, like, that's an incredible thing you did. And I'm sure it wasn't easy, but I also feel like it's probably part of why your story helped you to get back to work. And so during that time period, the first month you were in this recovery mode, was there ever a point in that, because many of our guests have done this, when it was like, there is no way I am going back to being a lawyer. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm checking out. Was there ever that? Was that part of your?
Oh, yes. 100%.
Okay.
And
how was that? Because you worked so hard to get there.
Yes. I mean, that was probably a few months, to be honest. That was just like, I'm not going back to this. it was basically sort of like, kind of like the cliche, like I would walk into, a bookstore and I'd be like, maybe I'm going to do this. I like this. Or, maybe I don't even bake, but right. Like maybe I'm going to open a bakery or, just things like that. This is too hard. I'm not going to go back to that. And I don't really know when like the shift was necessarily, but I just kind of remember thinking, like, fixating on that, probably thought like, this is too hard. I can't do this. And it was a little bit like, well, yes, I can, but I'm like not being given the chance to. Like I'm, and I don't mean that just me. I mean, I think I was thinking of it more broadly, like look at sort of all of these other incredibly strong women, moms who can do this, but are not being set up to do it. And so sort of when I grappled with that, that was a lot of responsibility. I felt like that it was kind of like, okay,
you were going to solve it for all of us. That's amazing. But
I was
no,
like,
but I love that. Like, because that's a really important part of your story to me, that calling, because you were suffering. I mean, you were in the midst of something that I have very clear familiarity with. The fact that there was this light bulb or whisper or something that led you to believe, this suffering that I'm doing, I'm going to make it better for others. Like when did that happen in the course of your time away?
Yeah, I think it happened gradually, and it was just sort of starting to talk to a few people that I really trusted at the firm about this idea. And because really I just sort of made the program I am running now kind of up. And I don't exactly mean it like that, but I just sort of was like, I want to create this program. I think I can do it. And, this is kind of what I want it to be. But I think it was just sort of starting to talk to people, honestly, looking probably at some of these like statistics for the first time. Again, these things that I had not looked at or considered before I became a mom, about just how much harder it is for women in the legal profession, moms, not even just in the legal profession, right? In corporate America, all of these things like that now are like abundantly clear to me. But at the time,
it does take you back, because honestly, and I think both of us share this, when we started on the journey of being a mom, how could it be any different? Right. Why would it affect me differently? But my God, if you start looking at the statistics and the data, it is startling of how difficult it really is. So I love that you were called into like this greater purpose. I'd love you to kind of share, and I also want to recognize you absolutely could have just gone back to work quietly and done your job the same as you did it before after you were feeling better. But you didn't. And I think what you did next is so incredible. Like, if you could walk us through that conversation of when you finally felt like you were ready to go back, kind of what that looked like.
Yeah. Thank you. But it's interesting because you said I could have gone back and done my job, and I actually don't think that I could have. Not because I was not capable of doing it, but I think that I was like fundamentally changed by this experience. And so I do not think that I could have come back and have not had anything change in terms of like, I don't know, my contributions or what I felt like I was, bringing. It was sort of like, in looking back, it was kind of like all these things started lining up, like right place, right time, things like that. I talked to one of my good friends at the firm, and she suggested I get in touch with our director of learning and development, who's now one of my really good friends, but who at the time I had never really spoken with before. And I talked to her, sort of like talked about this idea, and she was like, I know this is crazy, but I'm going to this conference next week. Do you want to come and like explore this idea? I went to that conference. There was a panel, Lori Mahalik-Levin, who runs this company, Mindful Return, which works with, law firms. Yeah. She spoke at that conference about like supporting parents and, return to leave coaching and things like that. And, coming out of that, it was just kind of like all the little pieces started falling into place. And so with that, then I basically kind of like put together a proposal and went to the firm and, said, this is what I think we need. We have amazing policies. I benefited from so much of those, but I was still basically, this close to walking away, as so many like before me have done. And what I think we have is a gap that we are not like actually creating an environment to help these moms, parents thrive. And I say that I don't think that we were at all unusual in that, right? Like, I think we're basically like any other, again, company in corporate America. But yeah, so I kind of proposed this idea that I would work with our lawyers and parents as they were like going through their own parental leave transitions.
That's amazing. And they said yes. I mean, that's the other part, like that recognizing the need and that you were coming at it with such passion and mission. Like I can feel it as you're even just describing this. Like I'd say yes to this. Like this is absolutely what we need and how we can support not losing so many incredibly brilliant parents because the environment makes it so difficult to feel good about being both an attorney and a parent. So I think, would you mind sharing some of the kind of ways that you feel have been the most successful through this program in supporting parents through that part of their life?
Yeah. For me, I would say that it is like the individual stories. And I mean, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, right? Because you can make an argument to look at data for the efficacy of programs like this, right? Like attrition data or engagement data or things like that. And I do think that there's value in that. I also think that there's issues why that might not tell the whole story or things like that. But for me, I think it is like the individual stories of people that I have worked with who have told me what an impact this program had on them, what I basically think is most valuable about the program. And it isn't to like, celebrate myself or anything like that. But
we're celebrating. We're celebrating.
You can celebrate. But what I think is most valuable is that lawyers, here at BCLP know that when they come back, if they are having a hard time with the transition back, which frankly, like, why would you not be? I'd be amazed if you were not. But, if they are having something of a hard time with that, like there is someone that they can talk to about that knows what it is like, that it can be confidential, that they don't have to publicly declare like, I'm having a hard time. I think something's wrong with me because I can't do this. It's just, there's somebody that they can talk to. And I think for me, that's the piece that I felt like had been missing, that I didn't.
Totally. I mean, what I was just going to say, like, what impact do you think that would have had? Like, as you were walking the halls, at that point when you were really having a moment of like, I don't think I can do this, to be able to walk into someone's office at the firm and say, I'm feeling like a bad mom, bad wife, bad lawyer, help me out. Like, is that sort of where you come into the picture through this program? Is there also other kind of components of it to prevent sort of those things happening as well? Or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because as you were saying that, I was thinking, oh gosh, I hope I've gotten involved before they get to that point and things, right? It's not always the way that it happens, right?
Yeah.
So basically, the program is voluntary. It's opt-in. I sort of publicize it within the firm. Our HR department also shares the information, with our lawyers when they notify them that they'll be going out on parental leave. But so it's designed to be really, I think, as much investment as the person going through the leave wants it to be. It can be, every 2 weeks or every month, a meeting around a specific topic. Sometimes it's only like meeting once or twice and then, being there if they need something, kind of following up. Certainly making sure to check in that first week or so when they're back from their parental leave to work. So that's kind of one component of it, the one-on-one coaching. The other big component of it is sort of like peer groups. So setting up like groups of parents who have kids roughly around the same age, right? I think we have like 65 or 70 lawyers kind of participating in these pods now, where they, meet once a month. And some of that is also just like the comfort in knowing other people are kind of going through a similar experience.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Right. Like,
well, especially with our, it's really hard. And I don't know, everyone lives in different environments, but especially when your social pod is full of either women that are not working or have different types of careers versus being in a pod with other people in the similar industry. I have to imagine that carries incredible value, because you don't have to explain the mental exhaustion and decision fatigue that you already have from being an attorney.
Right.
And now you're tapped in as a parent. So I think that is a brilliant aspect of this program. It must be, I bet I would expect it to be very appreciated, that you can sort of commiserate and get tips, about how to navigate different aspects of parenthood, right away.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you're right. Like, our profession, is unique in some respects, right? And so kind of trying to walk through that, well, okay, hold on. So are you offline from 5 to 8? And then do you log back on? Because you have to bill however many hours, right? And how does it literally happen in your day? And so there's some specifics like that. That's really
awesome. Cool. That's super helpful. I would say, what would you say to a mom or dad that's listening and they're barely holding it together? They're at that kind of maybe that last moment before they either take the test, which we will try to post on here because I feel like people should be aware of that, or they really know that they can't do this anymore. There's some nagging suspicion that this is not working out. What would be the best next step?
I think that it is probably admitting to yourself that you are not as important at work as you have led yourself to believe. And by that I mean, I think that the reason I was so dedicated to appearing perfect, and I was so sure I couldn't at all take a step back and take care of my own mental health, was I think I really thought this place would fall down, without me here to handle the case, which is ridiculous. I think we have 1,200 attorneys, right? But that sense of pressure, I think, is so ingrained in all of us to just feel like I have to do this. I have to be the one. And I think that there are situations in life where your body just basically tells you cannot do that. And sort of coming to terms with the fact that you have to take care of yourself, and work will survive, and you will be able to come back stronger if and when that's what you want.
Yeah. It's so hard though, because when you said that, and I'm guilty of this, but and you've mentioned this before, we make appointments, we set it up, and then we don't show up, right? Because we're busy. There's other things. There's a client call. There's a kid thing. There's how do you drill into people to go? Make sure we initiate, right? But then we don't follow through. And how that can be a dangerous aspect of setting you up for a disaster, quite honestly, that you might have been preventable if you've took the many steps along the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if does that resonate with you at all? How do you guide people through that?
I always hear people say you should treat yourself how you would treat your best friend, and that doesn't resonate with me as much. But for me, what has always been the touch point that resonates for me is my kids. So when you were saying that, I was thinking, never in a million years would my child have some kind of medical issue that I would set an appointment for, and then when that day came, I'd be like, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I'm way too busy. We'll do it in 3 weeks. Never would I do that. But I absolutely did that for myself. I, set the therapy appointment.
Absolutely. I mean,
a month out.
I did it last week. I mean, I was supposed to have a stress test, heart stress test. And I was my daughter called from school. I called and the woman's bring your kid with you.
Yeah.
Because you need to get this done. And so literally I'm there all stressed.
Yeah.
My child, I was really proud of myself for going.
Yeah.
But there was 99 reasons not to go. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, and to that's such a great way to think about it for anyone out there to put your kid in your position, and then you would follow through and show up. It's really, I like that way better, because I am a good friend and I love my best friends, but I think the kid pull is probably the smarter way to go.
It's definitely stronger for me. Yeah. It's just,
Totally. The other question that I'm curious about when we're talking about our kids is, and I know your kids are quite young, right? And so, in the season that you really went through this, I would expect that they are not going to remember. They were having a normal experience at daycare, which again it was the right choice.
Yeah.
If you had to look back and if you ever think they'd come into knowing about this experience, this struggle for you, sort of what do you think you would want them to understand about this chapter?
So, first of all, you're right that they were too young. Certainly my daughter was too young. It's interesting because I would have thought that my son was too young, and this period coincided with the fall. And I remember the following Halloween, he said to me, "Oh, you didn't go trick-or-treating with me last year. Will you go trick-or-treating with me this year? Why didn't you go trick-or-treating with me last year?" And I remember just saying, like, Mommy was sick at the time. But so that being said, I think what I would want them to know is that, I guess what I would want is that they would maybe be proud of me for taking the step and getting the health, taking care of myself and getting what I needed to get back to myself and to feel like myself again. And I sort of hope to emulate that for them in terms of, encouraging them to take care of their needs.
Yeah. I think you're doing that for all of us, quite honestly. You're emulating what it looks like to do take care of yourself so that you can be the best mom, lawyer. I mean, this is like you're modeling amazing behavior, especially in an environment that challenges that and makes it difficult sometimes, or has made it difficult. And the fact that you not only did that, but that you've kind of grown into creating something for the rest of us, for those coming behind you, to make their journey better and more supported. Like, I know they will be proud of you. And I think even though I don't know you that well, I'm so proud of your journey and how you've sort of created something that is for the rest of us is so powerful and such a good call to action. So I'm blown away by that. And I just, want to make sure that we kind of have a minute, because we're busy moms, busy lawyers, but curious if you've ever thought about sort of how this experience has really changed kind of your definition of success.
Yeah, it has fundamentally, I think, changed who I am as a person. Absolutely changed my definition of success. I resonated so strongly, I think, with success being like that gold star mentality, next step on the ladder, how many cases have I won? How many arguments have I won? Things like that. And I think I derive success, or try to, still getting better at it, maybe, all the time. But try to derive success really from like how I'm showing up probably as a person in the world, to my kids, to like coworkers, to the people I work with, things like that. And everything you said was really nice, but I also feel like it works both ways. I mean, I think that I learned so much from the parents in my program, and from sort of getting different perspectives and seeing, the ways that they make it work. I think that it had, running the program has made me a better parent, and has made me, frankly, a better law firm partner, has made me more empathetic, has given me like a diversity of perspective, things like that. So I absolutely think it's gone both ways.
No, that's amazing. It's a really great sort of, question I want to make sure we hit on before our time ends today. And that really is that call to action to the firms, to the organizations that are out there contemplating creating something of this nature. I would just love to hear your perspective on how hard is it, what does it take, and also sharing like the benefits of it, even what you just described, but also for the entities to encourage them to take similar actions that your firm has done.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that, because I think that it is a model that can be replicated across industries. I think the key component really is that you have to have somebody really dedicated to it, who, really obviously believes in the mission, and wants to dedicate themselves to it. And I just think something like this, I guess, something where there's like an acknowledgement, whether or not it's in like the parental leave context or not, although that's a really difficult, pivotal moment in a lot of folks' careers, but just having a safe space where there is not the pressure to be on all the time, to be perfect, but there is like a recognition that everybody is human and that's okay. And that doesn't mean that they're not fantastic lawyers.
Yeah.
But that maybe we have to get a little bit more creative about sort of how we support that at different phases in people's careers and realize that it's not like a one size fits all approach.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I will definitely like share more about what you've created and encourage anyone that is even considering implementing something like this at their firm. I think it is such a smart decision and there's such a need for it. And I just think this has been such an amazing time to learn more about it, and also just really just want to thank you for sharing so vulnerably and so honestly, because I know it's going to help a lot of people that really have probably felt a lot of the things that we've talked about and not known what to do or how to take care of themselves. So I just want to thank you with a very warm and heartfelt gratitude for taking the time to be here. And before we close, if there's any kind of other kind of last minute thoughts you've had, to encourage like a person contemplating becoming a mom, becoming a dad in the course of having a very intense career, any final words to give them hope that you'd want to share?
Yeah, that's funny because I always worry, like, sharing this much, am I going to scare people out of having kids, or am I going to make them think like it's too hard or things like that? And I absolutely hope that's not the case because, like being a mom is the best part of my life. It's the most rewarding part of my life. I actually think probably like the fact that I am here today, is somewhat a long winding road to show that you can do it, right? It's probably going to look different than what you expected. And I think maybe having some awareness of that going into it might be a good thing.
Yeah.
But, the other thing I wanted to say is to just thank you, Carrie, for creating the spaces for these conversations. One of the things I didn't mention in that, step when I was building the program, but I really dug into the like ABA's Commission on Parents and Caregivers in the Law. And I know that you had some of the women who worked on that study on. And I mean, that was just incredible, the work that they did. And so thank you for, amplifying that kind of work and these kinds of conversations.
No, it's absolutely been a privilege. And I really hope that through conversations like this, that we will really help that next generation and even our own generation to feel better about being a parent and being an attorney and trying to work and make it all happen together. So thank you again. You have instilled so much hope and so much purpose in our conversation today. And I just want to thank you very much for joining the Mothers-in-Law podcast.
Thank you.
Today's conversation is a powerful reminder that strength does not always look like pushing through quietly. Sometimes strength looks like telling the truth, asking for support, and using our hardest experiences to make the path easier for someone else. I am so grateful to Lindsay for sharing her story with us today with such honesty and purpose. Her experience helps normalize conversations about postpartum mental health, and her work shows what becomes possible when firms and workplaces support parents before, during, and after leave. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with another working mom, lawyer, or parent who may need to hear Lindsay's message. Thank you so much for listening to the Mothers-in-Law podcast. Until next time.
You've been listening to The Mothers-in-Law with Carrie Fogliani. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found the insights and stories shared helpful as you navigate your own journey. I also hope that you enjoyed listening to my mother, not that I always do. For more resources, to connect with the community, and to continue exploring how to align your personal and professional life, visit www.themothersinlaw.com. We appreciate you.